Now I continue my discussion on the Equal Protection Clause, which is part of the first limitation on the power of the Congress to enact penal legislation. In the case of City of Manila versus Honorable Lageo Jr., 945 and 495 Philippine Report, page 226. Equal Protection Clause or Equal Protection requires that all persons or things similarly situated should be treated alike, both as to right conferred and responsibility imposed. Similar subject, in other words, should not be treated differently so as to give undue favor to some and unjustly discriminate against other. The guarantee means that no person or class of person shall be denied of the same protection of law which is enjoyed by other persons or other class in like circumstances. This is simply the principle of valid classification. So, all person or all accused should be treated alike, depending on the nature and circumstances of the crime they committed. That's why there is a classification of the crime. We have grave, less grave, and light felony. So, ibig sabihin nito, this means that all persons who are of the same line and who are of the same footing should be treated equal as to right conferred and as to responsibility imposed. Okay? The basic principle is that all accused are presumed innocent unless proven otherwise. That's the principle of Equal Protection Clause. Another principle of Equal Protection Clause is that all accused shall have speedy, impartial public trial. Another manifestation of Equal Protection Clause is that the court, okay, in the issuance of warrant of arrest, are mandated to conduct preliminary examination or personal examination on the persons and circumstances who are applying for such warrant. In short, like what I said, things or persons who are situated or similarly situated or are of the same line should be treated equal as to right conferred and responsibility imposed. I made myself clear on it. Okay. Now, let's go to the principle of excessive fine. This is now the second limitation on the power of the Congress. Okay, the principle of excessive fine. I repeat, this is now one of the second limitation on the power of the Congress to enact penal legislation. The constitutional prohibition on the imposition of unusual fine applies to criminal prosecution. Okay, as enunciated in Republic versus De La Merced, okay, and Son, okay, citing the case of Serrano versus NLRC. Under these cases, it is stated that for a penalty to be considered obnoxious to the Constitution, it need to be more than merely harsh, excessive, out of proportion, or severe. To come under the prohibition that the penalty must be flagrantly, and plainly oppressive or so disproportionate to the offense committed as to shock the moral sense of all reasonable person as to what is right and proper under the circumstances. Okay? I repeat, in the case of Republic versus De La Merced and Son, that cited the case of Serrano, as well as citing the case of People versus Dionisio and the case of People versus De La Cruz. I'll repeat, for a penalty to be considered obnoxious to the Constitution, it needs, I should say, to be more than merely harsh, being harsh, excessive, out of proportion, or severe. To come under the prohibition, the penalty must be flagrantly and plainly oppressive and disproportionate to the offense committed, as to shock the moral sense of all reasonable person as to what is right and proper under the circumstances. So that's the principle of excessive fine and excessive punishment or penalty. Let's go now to the second limitation, or part of the second limitation, and this is cruel and unusual punishment. Okay, this is cruel and unusual punishment. The constitutional proscription or prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment under the Bill of Rights extend only to situations of extreme corporeal or psychological punishment that strips the individual of his humanity. The proscription is aimed more at the form or character of the punishment rather than at its severity. Settled is the rule that the punishment authorized by statute is not cruel, degrading, or disproportionate to the nature of the offense unless it is flagrantly and plainly oppressive and wholly disproportionate to the nature of the offense as to shock the moral sense of the community. It takes more than merely being harsh, excessive, out of proportion, or severe of a penalty to be obnoxious to the Constitution. Based on this principle, the Supreme Court has consistently overruled contention of the defense that the penalty of fine or imprisonment authorized by statute involved is cruel and degrading. In People versus Tongko, the Supreme Court held that the prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment is generally aimed at the form or character of the punishment rather than its severity in its respect of its duration or amount, and applies to punishment which never existed in America or which public sentiment regard as cruel or obsolete. This refers, for instance, to those inflicted at the whipping post, or in the pillory, or to burning at the stake, breaking on the wheel, disemboweling, and the like. The fact that the penalty is severe provides insufficient basis to declare a law unconstitutional, and does not by the fact alone make it cruel and inhuman. So the guillotine, the firing squad, this burning, pillory, okay, and breaking on the wheel and disemboweling are considered cruel and inhuman. Okay? Although the penalty is severe, class, it does not follow that it's cruel and inhuman, okay, punishment. So, we're done with the second limitation on the power of the Congress to enact penal legislation. Let's go now to the third limitation, the principle of ex post facto law and the Bill of Attainder. So what you mean by ex post facto? Ex means past, facto law, okay? So, Congress is prohibited from passing retroactive penal laws that are prejudicial to the accused. Penal laws are those acts of the legislature which prohibit certain acts and establish penalties for their violation, or those that define crimes, trait of their nature, and provide for their punishment. So we are simply referring to that no law shall be passed, okay, giving retroactive effect, okay, or providing retroactive effect. Why you go back to the basic principle on criminal law, the principle that there are three characteristics of criminal law: territoriality, prospectivity, and the principle of what we call prospectivity, territoriality, and general.